The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security say they are surging to investigate fraud in Minnesota, including at child care centers, in the latest show of federal force in the state, home to the country's largest Somali population. The investigation comes weeks after ICE launched operations in the Minneapolis area to specifically target undocumented Somali immigrants, precipitated by revelations about widespread fraud against the state, as well as President Donald Trump's comments that he doesn't want Somalis in the country. The president has long railed against Minnesota's Somali diaspora, the vast majority of whom are U.S. citizens. Around 84,000 people of Somali descent live in the Minneapolis area, many of whom resettled after fleeing a bloody and lasting civil war in their home country. The stepped-up effort also comes just days after a YouTube content creator, who has created anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim videos in the past, posted a viral video in which he claimed to find widespread fraud at Somali-run child care centers. The video, which includes limited evidence for the creator's allegations, has received more than 1.5 million views on YouTube as of Monday evening, and was retweeted by Vice President JD Vance and former Doge leader Elon Musk. Scorned by the president, Somalis in Minnesota are embraced by the state that took them in. One law enforcement official talked about the buildup of DHS agents in Minneapolis on Monday, including visits to some 30 businesses, was due in part to the video. Responding to a post on X about the alleged fraud, Vice President JD Vance, increasingly at the forefront of the administration's anti-immigrant rhetoric, said, "They're stealing both money and political power from Minnesotans." By Monday, DHS began posting videos showing agents from Homeland Security investigations entering what it called suspected fraud sites. DHS and FBI both say they are investigating fraud. On Sunday, FBI Director Kash Patel said the Bureau had already surged resources to Minnesota even before the public conversation escalated online. Fraud that steals from taxpayers and robs vulnerable children will remain a top FBI priority in Minnesota and nationwide, he said in a post on X. The FBI believes this is just the tip of a very large iceberg. We will continue to follow the money and protect children, and this investigation very much remains ongoing. DHS is on the ground in Minneapolis, going door to door at suspected fraud sites, said the agency on X, along with a video of people in jackets marked Police HSI. The American people deserve answers on how their taxpayer money is being used and ARRESTS when abuse is found. Neither agency said in their posts if any arrests had been made in the latest crackdown. Governor Tim Walz, meanwhile, has pushed back on accusations state authorities overlooked fraud. The governor has worked for years to crack down on fraud and asked the state legislature for more authority to take aggressive action. Authorities have targeted fraud in the state previously, including in July, when the FBI raided 5 businesses in the Twin Cities which had allegedly committed Medicaid housing assistance fraud, according to the Minnesota Star Tribune. A federal prosecutor said on December 18 that half or more of the roughly $18 billion in federal funds that supported 14 Minnesota-run programs since 2018 may have been stolen, according to the Associated Press. The magnitude cannot be overstated, First Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson said. What we see in Minnesota is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes. It's staggering, industrial-scale fraud. The wide-reaching investigations into fraud against the state build on previous investigations into fraud related to COVID relief programs under the Biden administration. Surge follows viral video. What officials called a surge of federal resources follows a viral YouTube video by Nick Shirley, a 23-year-old self-styled independent journalist who posts content on social media with a conservative bent. In the viral video on alleged fraud in Minnesota, Shirley visits and attempts to enter several child care centers in Minnesota he suggests are not actually operational, although he claims they're receiving government funding through CCAP, a program providing child care funds for low-income families. Shirley does not specify the days when he visited most of the centers, which he claimed were Somali-run, saying only he visited one at midday. A spokesperson for Minnesota Gov, Tim Walz, said 2 of the centers featured in the video are closed. The video also sees Shirley escorted out of one building by police after reports he was trespassing and harassing people. It is not unusual for child care centers to keep their doors locked or to require a key card for entry due to safety concerns, according to Claire Sanford, the Vice President of Government and Community Relations for the Minnesota Child Care Association. And most child care centers would be especially wary of allowing someone filming to enter due to concerns about children's privacy, she said. She added, although it would be unusual for a center to operate without any children at all, it's not rare for centers to operate below their official capacity. CCAP funding, the kind of funding Shirley says is being stolen, is based on the eligible children enrolled at a facility, not its total capacity. Child care centers face strict regulations in Minnesota, Sanford said. Under the law, each licensed center should be visited at least once a year by an unannounced licensor, who spends hours running through a checklist of roughly 400 items, she explained. Newly opened centers face even stricter scrutiny as part of a recent bid to combat fraud. They can expect 4 visits in their first operating year, 3 of them unannounced. The video does not address those regulations. Its explosive impact is one example of the growing power of the right-wing media ecosystem, largely fueled by independent creators whom the president has favored over traditional news networks. Shirley was invited to speak with Trump at the White House in October, part of a round-table discussion on Antifa with other conservative online creators. He previously filmed a video at the Capitol attack on January 6, 2021, a look at deported migrant scammers in NYC, and an interview with Attorney General Pam Bondi. Whitney Phillips, an associate professor of information politics and media politics at the University of Oregon, says she has a hard time imagining the FBI or any government agency under Trump surging resources to a particular area if a left-leaning independent journalist made similar kinds of accusations. But the government isn't being steered in any directions it doesn't want to go, she added. Right-wing influencers give the government a reason to do what they were already planning on doing. Other administration officials, including the Department of Labor, Secretary of Education, and members of Congress, have joined in with social media posts sharing Shirley's video. A law enforcement official said the investigations announced Monday were spurred in part by the video and cover investigations into both immigration and fraud. Most of the outrage regarding allegations of fraud in the Somali community has focused on Feeding Our Future, a nonprofit prosecutors say falsely claimed to be providing meals to needy children during the COVID-19 pandemic. Federal charges were brought against dozens of people, the vast majority of them Somali, beginning in 2022. A raft of state audits into lax oversight of Minnesota funds was dismissed by Democratic Governor Tim Walz. Allegations with the Somali community's strong support for and contributions to Democrats helped shield them from scrutiny was reported last year. An early investigation by the Minnesota Department of Education into alleged fraud by Feeding Our Future was stymied in part by a lawsuit filed by the organization and its founder, Amy Bach, who is not Somali, alleging the investigation was discriminatory. She later voluntarily dropped the suit a week after federal agents raided her home and the nonprofit's offices. As fraud scandals erupt in Minnesota on Governor Tim Walz's watch, accountability is in short supply. Bach was later convicted of 7 federal charges, including bribery. She has not yet been sentenced, but a judge denied her request for a new trial. Lead prosecutor Joe Thompson said authorities have recovered only about $60 million of the $250 million stolen in the Feeding Our Future conspiracy, according to the Associated Press. "I hear they ripped off, Somalians ripped off that state for billions of dollars," Trump said. "Billions. Every year, billions of dollars, and they contribute nothing." President has long-standing grudge against Somalis. The fraud allegations, producing more than 40 convictions in the Feeding Our Future case alone, have proved a lightning rod for Trump, invectives against Somalis. But he has aggressively attacked Somali immigrants and Americans of Somali descent since his first presidential term, when he included Somalia on a travel ban alongside other Muslim-majority nations. U.S. Rep. Ilhan Omar, a naturalized citizen who came to the country as a refugee, has been a frequent target of his ire. Earlier in December, Trump said Omar and her friends shouldn't be allowed to serve as members of Congress. He also called Somalis in Minnesota garbage, who should go back to where they came from. "When they come from hell and they complain and do nothing but bitch, we don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it," Trump said in a cabinet meeting this month. Vice President Vance loudly rapped his fist on the conference table in support. Somalis and their advocates, however, point out the group convicted of fraud does not reflect the entire community. The Somali community in the Twin Cities is overwhelmingly made up of hardworking families, small business owners, healthcare workers, students, and taxpayers who contribute every day to Minnesota's economy and civic life. Jelani Hussein, the executive director of the Council on American Islamic Relations Minnesota chapter, wrote in an email, "When an entire community is stigmatized, the impact is immediate. Families live in fear, businesses suffer, and trust in public institutions erodes. There's a few bad apples, that committed crimes and broke the law." Kamali Ali, a 39-year-old who came to the U.S. from Somalia as a child, previously said after the ICE operation targeting Somalis was announced. "But at the same time, you can't do a collective punishment.